I think we can go ahead and bring the slide deck on up. Thank you, Tyler. Okay. Again, this is the presentation on retail concessions opportunities here at the Sunport. We will be releasing the RFP in fairly short order, and this is a general overview of the agenda for today. We'll be giving some background on the Sunport and our ongoing recovery here with passenger volumes and the renovation project. We'll talk about operating a concessions unit here in the program that is unfolding. And I'll give a little teaser about an upcoming opportunity that is called Ascend ABQ program. That's our small kiosk program. That is a separate program, but there's some overlap and there has been some confusion about the nature of the two different programs. I wanted to dispel any confusion about that. And then rolling on to the RFP process and the ACDBE certification, which is the Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. Next slide, please. All right, so Albuquerque International Sunport. As you could see from the previous slide, that's a renovation rendering. We're very excited to be in the process of finishing out some of the early spaces, both inside the concourse and TSA. The new TSA checkpoint will be open on December 15th. That's our target, and it's looking like we're going to be able to accomplish that. And then once the work is virtually done in TSA area, we'll then the project will move to where the current TSA is located, where there's going to be a build out of the new food hall, the food and beverage program. Now, what you're seeing here is a rendering of the T connector, and we wanted to just kind of demonstrate for folks who are on the line now with us and who will watch the webinar on our website, which will be available on our website, ABQ Sunport biz.com at the terminal renovation landing page. And there's a lot of details actually there about the whole renovation as well as the concessions redevelopment. But I think you can see from this rendering, we're very much respecting the sense of place that we've established here at the Sunport, but lifting up some of the colors and design elements to make it give it a little bit more of a modern feel. I think, those of you who spent quite a bit of time here, you'll see some wall sconces that were obviously procured in the 80s. Things like that will be going away, but we're very much keeping in place some of the classic elements that everyone knows and loves. So go ahead and please proceed to the next slide. So this is just a mapping of our stakeholders. I won't go through it in detail. You can take a look at this. But just, I think the message here is that, the Sunport is it's a community good. It is a facility that's for the people of New Mexico. It is the gateway of New Mexico. We're an origin and destination airport. And so that means not very many layovers, but a lot of people coming in from around the country and around the world to visit places in New Mexico, and a lot of domestic travelers here from the state who have connectivity all around the country and throughout the world. And so we're very proud of this asset that we are the stewards of. And all these partnerships that you see here reflected are very important to us. And the same certainly goes for our concessionaires. We very much view the concessionaires as partners in establishing and maintaining a very high quality passenger experience. Next slide, please. And this is a snapshot of our airline partners. A couple of them are seasonal. For example, JetBlue is a seasonal partner, but we also have Sun Country Airlines coming in June 2024, and they will be providing nonstop service between ABQ and MSP, Minneapolis-St. Paul, the Twin Cities. We're very excited about bringing on a new airline partner. I think those of you who've been following air service developments over the last couple of years know that Spirit Airlines came in as a new partner last year. It was the tail end of the summer last year. And so we're very excited to welcome new airline partners. And of course, those very well-established partners are continuing to upgauge aircraft. Some of them have increased air service destinations, and we're now at 29 nonstop destinations, which is the most that we've had since 2012. Next slide, please. And this is a snapshot of our air service recovery. Enplanements means passengers who are arriving at ABQ to board a flight to go somewhere. And deplanements are those who are arriving at ABQ from other destinations and deplaning here as their final destination. And so we have surpassed, as of FY 2023, and we are on a July through June cycle, 5 million passengers. And I can tell you now that passenger volumes for September and October of this year, for which we have preliminary data, have already surpassed pre-COVID levels. And so we're right there again. And it's a very exciting moment for us to be, noting that we're in a place now where we're able to accommodate as many passengers as we did before. And I think those numbers will gradually increase. Again, it's an origin and destination market. And so this is a very kind of unique airport in the sense that we are the one major commercial airport in the state of New Mexico. We get folks coming in from neighboring states as well to take flights in and out of ABQ. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so proud of our sense of place, because it's very deliberate that people are coming to ABQ to visit New Mexico, and we like for folks when they land here or when they're coming home, if they're from here, to really get the vibe and the feel. Right, as soon as you get off that aircraft, you can see the Sandia Mountains outside the window. You can roll your roller bags over the brick pavers and get that familiar click clack. Next slide, please. This is some information from a 2019 passenger survey that was conducted of over 1,000 outbound travelers at the Sunport. We see here from this slide that the majority of our travelers are here for leisure, essentially. And so you've got vacationers, folks visiting family and friends. We do have some business travelers, but it's a fairly low percentage, I would say, given the economic developments that we see taking shape in Albuquerque and around the region. I think those numbers are going to increase because we've had both U.S.-based businesses and international businesses increasing their production, their R&D, their logistics businesses here in New Mexico, and that is really very much trending upwards with developments like Maxion, the solar panel and cell manufacturer that is headquartered in Singapore, and you're seeing it with several other companies that are opening up shop in the growth of the film and television business, which we're very proud to see that increasing. Next slide, please. So operating a concessions unit at the Sunport, I'm going to give a basic overview about what it takes to operate a concessions unit here. But I think you can see from that rendering, that's a photo of the food hall. And we're really bringing in some new furniture and some nice colors that are still within our palette, but really kind of lift up and brighten the space a little bit more. You see there some of the reds. We also have carpeting that has some teal patterns in there, and some new plant life as well. So very excited to roll that out. Next slide, please. So some details here about the unique environment we have, the Sunport. Just want to flag a few items for you. Hours of operation are a very critical issue for not just this airport, but all airports. We're a little bit different than your food and beverage and retail offerings in the city. And that's because we need to make sure that we are open for business early in the morning, we get quite a bit of traffic. I'd say most of our traffic is really early morning, and then we have a spike around the lunch hour, and it tends to drop off after that a bit. We do have some spikes in the early evening as well, but that early morning traffic is incredibly high, and very important that we're providing the amenities and the services for our passengers at those times. And so we do have a very clear policy about hours of operation with our concessionaires. And of course, this is a secure facility, and when you have personnel who need to access the secure side to work there past TSA, that means they have to be badged. And so another difference of operating in the airport is that badging process, and that employees all have to pass a security background check, and that's federally mandated. And we do use databases to make sure we're doing a thorough job to check backgrounds and ensure that people who are working on the secure side, that it's appropriate to have them there. We do provide employee access for parking, and there could be fees that employees have to pay for parking, but generally speaking, I think we're doing a pretty good job of limiting that kind of impact, and making sure that employees of our concessionaires have free places to park. A couple other points there. Of course, merchandise delivery and storage is also a bit more complicated than an inline store in the city. And so that's something that people need to keep in mind. One of the reasons why we have such a high investment threshold in our RFPs, and why we understand that merchandisers and food and beverage operators do have to charge a bit more than street price, is because of those additional costs of operating at the airport. And so our standing policy is street pricing plus 10%. And then our customer spending power. So, this is people who fly tend to have the means to spend money at retail shops and food and beverage outlets. And so it's really important to us, and really critical actually, that what we're doing is offering high quality. That's, I think, what our passengers have come to expect, and that they really love the current program. And we're gonna do it even better with this new program. So please go to the next slide. All right, I won't linger too long on this one, but this is just to showcase some of the different kind of opportunities that businesses have to partner. And so you could have a franchise, a licensing agreement, where a larger operator that has experience operating in a Sunport licenses your brand, or proprietary brands. It's really all of the above. There's different ways for smaller businesses to partner with larger businesses. And also, especially for retail, the supply chain product line agreements that you can have with an operator in the core program. And that means that you can showcase your goods without necessarily having to make an investment into operating the unit yourself, but you can showcase your goods through the core operators and those that are awarded units in the program via the RFP process. And of course, can answer any questions that come up after I'm done going through the slides. So next one, please. Okay, so examples of rent and fees. There is a percentage rent that we charge, so it's not just a flat per square footage rate of rent in the concessionaire spaces. It is a percentage of sales. We do have a minimum annual guarantee, but the minimum annual guarantee will not kick in until year 2 of the contract. And that's because the MAG, so-called MAG, is based on the previous year's revenues. And that's something that we instituted because MAGs were quite common in the airport concessions industry, but the pandemic really disrupted the whole system, and we thought it would be best to allow concessionaires to really establish their sales, establish that revenue trend before we institute the minimum annual guarantee. And by the way, if I say anything incorrect through this webinar, I know my RFP team will chime in and make a correction. And folks, please do feel free to do that if I get anything wrong. And concessionaires are responsible for paying utilities that they use in their concession spaces, and that includes broadband, by the way, which often is not considered a utility, but it is a service that concessionaires pay for. And any additional storage space leased to concessionaire is charged at a predetermined rate. So that's different than the percentage rent that you pay on the footprint of your front of house, essentially. Okay, next slide, please. So, this is a phrase I think we pulled from some of our consistent messaging about the Dream of Flight project. But one thing to be very aware of is that the $87 million renovation project, which we have entitled Dream of Flight, Sunport Reimagined, it's not only about renovating the spaces that customers can see, can experience, and walk through. It's also about updating the terminal's aging infrastructure. And so we're really plussing up the safety and security of the facility through those upgrades. And even though folks don't see with the naked eye what that looks like, it is about 1/3 of the total project cost. And so it's a critical element of the upgrade. Next slide, please. Redevelopment objectives. This slide articulates our philosophy and our goals around the redevelopment of the concessions program. We believe it's very important to showcase the products, the flavors of New Mexico, and that's what we've been talking about really since we publicly launched the renovation project. We want to see local brands represented in the airport. And for some of you who followed the process where we recommended and City Council approved the awards to Fresquez Concessions for 12 of the 16 food and beverage units, we've really done something new with our program, and Fresquez Concessions very much brought this to the table with the reflection and inclusion of local brands, recognizable brands that you will see out in the city of Albuquerque and you'll see around the state. And that's what we want to do with the retail as well. Now, the nature of retail is a little bit different than food and beverage. It leans a little bit more on the side of local product lines rather than necessarily local branded shops in the retail program, but we are also looking for locally branded shops in the retail program. So just want to emphasize that, but the most important part is definitely the goods, the merchandise. And of course, this maximizes our economic impact. And we do expect that revenues will increase for the program writ large when we launch the new program. But that said, I really want to emphasize it's always been more important to us to make sure that we're creating a program that reflects the values and, as I said before, the products and the flavors of New Mexico before anything else. So job number one is not just to maximize revenues. Job number one is to really showcase New Mexico. We do think that'll lead to higher revenues, but I just want to make it very clear that the top objective is not to make the most money possible. It really is about the spirit of the program and what we're offering passengers in this new experience. And of course, it does have the benefit of creating jobs and economic stimulus in Albuquerque and the region, and really pride ourselves in the Sunport, our airline partners, all the service providers, and the concessionaires offering high quality jobs. And of course, you still have to compete with employers in the city and around the state. And so I think that what we see now is wages have increased in this space. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the people who live and work here. Next slide, please. So upgrades to the program, I've talked about it a little bit already, but increase the size of the program by over 20% post-security. So that's both retail and food and beverage. There's going to be more space. post-security. So previously we had several locations, both retail and food and beverage, that were pre-security. In this new program, we'll have only two. So we will have a cafe in the Great Hall with some grab-and-go food, and that's actually already been awarded, so that will be a Black Mesa. That will be in the Great Hall on the east side. And then on the west side, where Cavalcade of Wings is located currently, that's our historical model airplane exhibit. That's operated by a nonprofit organization of the same name, Cavalcade of Wings. That's actually getting relocated, and it will be underneath the famous biplane that many of you have seen in the Great Hall. And in that location, we'll have a retail unit. So one of the units in this package for the retail RFP is that one. That said, those are the only two pre-security concessions units that will exist. All of the rest of the program will be post-security, and that's 24 in all. And that's 9 of the 10 retail units and 15 of the 16 food and beverage units will all be post-security. And this is really right-sizing the balance of our program and making sure people can get through that stressful, sometimes, journey through TSA, and so they can relax on the other side. And of course, new concepts. You know, we've really, I'm encouraged to see what people are bringing to the table now, what the concessionaires who are established and those who are interested in the new program are offering. I think everybody gets it. So it hasn't been difficult to get the message across about what we want. And that will be articulated very clearly in the RFP when it comes out as well for retail. You'll see that what we're going for, essentially. And I think we can go to the next slide now. So, quick bullet point list of all the different kinds of merchandise that will be offered in the new retail program. I think everyone knows from our present program, we've got all these things, and we hope to bring in some of the same classic products that people love to see in the program, but to bring in some new merchandise as well. And I think it's really of critical importance, and this is especially for the non-news and convenience offerings, that you're working with local producers and local artisans to make sure that you are offering the highest quality locally made goods available. And of course, there's always going to be, those items that you want to make sure are affordable, and that if people want to buy just a little $10, $15, $20 gift, they can do that, and that's available. But we also know that some of the higher quality items do very well. That's jewelry and art, pottery. We've got an incredible group of artisans, a collection really of artisans across all of our different cultures in New Mexico, and they offer and produce items that are not made anywhere else in the country or in the world, and we want to see those offered in the Sunport. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to shift gears here just for a moment, because we have been made aware that there's some confusion between the small kiosk program, which we have talked about before. Some of you have heard the mayor talk about it, and myself as well. So there's been some confusion between the small kiosk program and the core retail concessions program. Ascend ABQ. So this is my little tease here. Ascend ABQ, elevating local businesses. It's the first time we're talking about it publicly, but I wanted to help address this confusion. This is a totally separate program than the retail RFP that is being introduced and will be rolled out as a result of that RFP process. And so Ascend ABQ is strictly small kiosk units. You can also see them referenced as retail merchandising units, RMUs. There will be an RFP out in January to recruit a manager for this program. That's an individual or a company that would essentially be responsible for managing this program, for supporting local vendors with training, with resources, to help them to manage their logistics and any issues that come up, technical or otherwise. So this is a very high level of support that's provided for smaller local businesses that may not quite be ready to make an investment to operate their own unit or to do a joint venture in the core retail program. And who may not be ready to merchandise through some of the inline units that are awarded as a process through this RFP process. And so these small kiosks, 2 of which will be pre-security in the Great Hall, and that's separate from those 2 inline units I mentioned earlier, as well as at least 4 small kiosks that will be in either A or B concourse. Those are being designed by one of our City of Albuquerque on-call designers, and we would be paying for the build out of those kiosks. And so the barrier of entry is very low. The expense of operating is very low. It's not a huge capital investment. There will, of course, be rents that need to be paid. But we are establishing Ascend ABQ to ensure that we're also giving a helping hand to those smaller businesses that really need additional support to get ready to merchandise in the core program, or the kinds of training that they need to perhaps one day compete for an RFP opportunity in another airport. And so, this is a really tailor-made program, the first of its kind for ABQ. And I'm happy to take questions about that, but I just want everybody to know on this call that aside from the management RFP, that is the award to manage this program, there will be a process whereby we announce this more publicly and more broadly in early 2024. And we will be inviting small local businesses to join us here at the airport for an info session early in the year so that we can share more information about that. And we'll be helping to create a short list of vendors that we want to bring into that program so they can spend 6 months to a year on a short-term lease marketing in the airport. And so you haven't missed anything. If you're wondering about this opportunity, you've not missed a thing. There'll be a lot more information available about it next year. So next slide, please. This is a little, we included some design renderings just to show you what this will look like. So as I said, we'll be paying for the build out of these units. And we're very excited about the rollout of this program. Next slide, please. Okay, so back to the RFP for retail concessions. Next slide. Okay, so the one-stop shop for information about the Dream of Flight renovation and concessions redevelopment is this website. You've heard me mention it before. It's ABQ Sunport, biz.com. The terminal renovation landing page. You can either use this link or you can simply go to the doing business website, which ABQ Sunport, biz.com, and you can access the information through that webpage. And so there's all the webinars that we've done to date will be loaded on there. There are several already that are available, including information sessions about what it takes to operate in the Sunport and the ACDBE program. And you can also see all of the press releases that we put out there about the program. And we've been really consistent. So all the information that's in the press releases, those remain accurate. We haven't changed anything about the direction, the philosophy, and what we're calling for in this new program. And then the other link, the first one that's up here, that's Bonfire. So the City of Albuquerque procurement uses the Bonfire Hub for all its procurement offerings. And this is also linked to in our Doing Business website on that terminal renovation landing page, but here's a direct link to it as well. And if you're interested in seeing the RFP, it's free registration. You go to Bonfire, register, you can view and download all the RFP documents. and that does not require you to make a commitment to respond. So that will give you a chance to assess the RFP. There will be a sample lease agreement attached to the RFP as well, and also design guidelines for what we require in terms of baseline for design of the different units in the concession program. So there's a lot of information there. There's also a means to ask questions of procurement. You can submit a question, and our procurement team is really great about getting right on those questions and work with us to make sure we're providing accurate information, and we vet it out very carefully. And it's released, whoever asks the question, it's released to everyone all at the same time as an addendum through Bonfire. Next slide, please. Okay, and so key proposal elements, we've got concepts and design, operational experience, and financial. And so concept and design is really the key for us. It's so important that in the plans for the types of concepts, the types of units and product lines that will be offered really fit the description of what we're calling for. And we have been extra clear in our introduction to the RFP about exactly what we're looking for. And we're very clear in the designs, it's sort of the description of what we're looking for in a design, that it is important to us that we maintain a very consistent sort of vibe, but within each tenant space, you can express your brand, you can express, what you believe is the best way to reflect your offerings. Within certain confines, but there's still quite a bit of freedom there to do very creative things with the design. And then operational experience, there's quite a bit that can go into that section. But broadly speaking, it's about your qualifications. It's experience operating a business. It's your narrative about kind of your philosophy around employment practices. Some folks might want to include information about sustainability, what you do to engage the local community, and how you're looking to support members of the local community by having an operation here and having I think we'll see great success with that. And so with that comes the question of what are you doing to give back, and that is important to us. And then as far as financial pieces, projected revenues and rent, and there's a lot of details that go into that financial package. I won't go into the detail that's in the RFP. Kind of limited how many questions I can answer about that in detail, but it will be very clearly spelled out in the RFP. Next slide, please. So timeline. Dream of Flight, as we mentioned, it's will be released very soon. So targeting the release of this RFP early 2023 for the retail program. And as I mentioned, 12 to 16 food and beverage units have already been awarded and approved by Mayor's Office and the City Council. So we're already starting to see this program be sort of unveiled. I think, if some of you have caught the local news coverage, the concessionaire, Fresca's Concessions, and us, we've already talked a little bit about the units that, we already talked about the units that'll be in the new program. So that said, we're very excited to be looking at the proposals that you all will come up with in terms of the retail program. And then we also currently have a 4-unit RFP for food and beverage. So 4 of the food and beverage units were not awarded in the previous process. Those 4 units are currently out in an RFP that's on the street right now. So that was put out a little more than a month ago, I believe. And I think the close date of that food and beverage RFP for the 4 remaining units is early January 4th, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, there's just a little blurb there about the Ascend ABQ, just to make sure, again, that everybody recognizes the Dream of Flight, Concessions, Redevelopment, and Ascend ABQ programs are different. And then the base building redevelopment of the concessions program. It's expected to be finished in the last quarter of calendar year 2024. So what that means is Jane's corporation, that's they are the construction manager at risk, the lead general contractor for the renovation project. They are going to be finished with all of the base builds for all the concessions units and the renovation program that touches the all across the terminal around the end of 2024. Now, likely there'll be some final elements that are getting dialed in that stretch into early 2025. But that is essentially the target. And then those warm shells that are handed over for tenant improvements, we do have some rolling warm shell handovers, but the final handoffs will happen at the end of 2024. And that means that the tenant improvements will stretch into 2025. And we expect that all the tenant improvements will be done by around early to midsummer 2025. So very much looking forward to that. As many of you can imagine, operating an airport and doing a deep renovation in the terminal is a lot to manage. But it's going well. We're very excited about this. And I think that might be the last slide. We can go to the next one just to see what else we might have. All right. I think we have, okay. Almost forgot. We have ACDBE content. Now, if I'm not going to do a deep dive on ACDBE, okay? But there is a webinar on abqsunportbiz.com that is a deep dive about ACDBE, what it is, how to register. It's not a requirement, but it can be very helpful to operators to be registered as an ACDBE. There are some ACDBE targets in the retail RFP, but not every single unit has an ACDBE target. Okay, so if you're not an ACDBE, don't worry too much. Just look at the RFP when it comes out. And if there are targets in the units that you're looking for, just make sure that you include that as one of your objectives to either get certification or for your larger company that you're partnering with ACDBE certified entities. Next slide, please. So a little bit about what the ACDBE is. I've said that acronym so many times and I still trip over it sometimes, but it's a mouthful. But it is a US DOT program. Okay, so this is a national program. New Mexico has an ACDBE office. And if you have questions about how to reach them, they're on our website, but you can also ask in the chat and our team will help you to get that information. Next slide, please. And this was the webinar I mentioned. It's online. So it's been there for many, many months. It's still there. We're going to leave it up. And so you can watch that webinar anytime. Next slide. Okay, and that's actually the NMDOT site for disadvantaged business enterprises. And so that's the link. That's actually where you would go to apply. You wouldn't apply through the Sunport. You would apply through NMDOT. Okay, next slide. All right, here's the last one I was looking for. So this is a rendering, just to point out, this is a rendering of the food court, the food hall rather, and that art there at the bulkhead, just above the Dream of Flight statue, is a placeholder. That's not actually the art that will be there, but we're very excited about also rolling out the new art that'll be part of the program. So I'll take questions now. I think there are several in the chat, and these, by the way, the questions are moderated. Microphones are disabled and cameras are disabled for this session. So if you have a question, make sure you put it in the chat and we'll get to it.
Great. Thanks, Manny. So I'm not sure if you can view the chat, but we have a couple that just came in. And we'll start at the top. So the first question is, hi, has the restaurant bar food vendors already been chosen?
Yes, thank you. That was a question from Barry. Thank you, Barry, for the question. I did mention earlier, 12 of the 16 units have already been awarded. That's bringing in local brands like The Grove, Santa Fe Brewing, New Mexico Pinon Coffee. We've got Teller Distillery, Steelbender, Annapurna is a partner in that, and several other brands, as well as a couple of nationals, like Dunkin' Donuts, coffee, and brands like that. We will have the return of Black Mesa as well, and the return of Panda Express. Other than those two returnees, it's all new. And I do expect some more local brands to come in the food and beverage RFP through the current mini RFP process for the 4 remaining units. And that will remain to be seen. The next question from Nicholas: how do I request to have my New Mexico product sold in the Sunport? So best way to do that's probably a couple of different options. If you are a vendor that wants to establish a supply chain agreement, then the best way to do that is to reach out to those businesses that have been awarded the RFP. So if you aren't already in talks with a proposer, then you can wait until the awards are announced, and you can engage with the businesses that are awarded the units in the program to talk to them about carrying your product. But the other way is through the Ascend ABQ program. And so that's why we did want to talk about that a little bit, that some vendors may find it a little bit difficult to market their product or to demonstrate that their product line can be successful in the airport, and that's why Ascend ABQ is there. Tyler, Angeline, would you add anything to that answer?
No, that sounds good.
All right. Next question is from Lauren. So Lauren is saying, this is exciting, wondering the same for jewelry specifically. Yeah, so the answer applies. If you are a jeweler that is producing in New Mexico, you can talk to the vendors that are currently in the program. We do have Hudson and Stellar. Now the companies have merged, but they still operate here in the Sunport, and El Mercado as well, which is a local company. They all sell local goods, and you can talk to them anytime about carrying your product line. That said, the current retail program is gradually phasing out. And so again, gotta look at who's awarded in the new program and engage those folks. And we can help make those introductions after the RFP process. We can't do it during the RFP process. RFP processes are quite sensitive, and we're restricted from showing any favoritism to any brand, any producer, any proposer. So once the RFP is out, I step back, and even some of the stuff I'm sharing now, I just can't, I really won't be able to talk about it. And so all questions have to go to City of Albuquerque procurement while the RFP is open. It's still a sensitive process after the RFP closes, because procurement will be examining, screening all of the proposals, and then the ad hoc committee will assess those proposals that make it through the screening process, and we will establish our recommendation of award. Then it goes to the mayor's office, and then that's taken to city council. So throughout that whole process, many months, it's quite sensitive, and we have to be very careful about making those connections more actively. Okay, and Barry asked for my contact information. Yes. Tyler, Angeline, can one of you drop in my email address to the chat?
No.
Folks can email me. Again, I can't answer when it's an open procurement. I can't answer any questions directly other than to point you to the resources. So it's okay to email me, but what you'll get is, I'll, depending on your question, I'll either send you to the resource on the website. If you can't find something and it's publicly available somewhere, I'll help you find it because it's publicly available. But any questions that are pretty specific about the RFP itself, once it's open, I'll direct you to procurement. Dean asked, do you have to be open 5 a.m. to 11, 7 days a week? it does, there are some exceptions in the core program. For example, full service restaurants and bars might not be open at 5 a.m. It really does kind of depend on the nature of the food and beverage program. But for retail, it's a little different. I think for retail, generally speaking, yes, those are the hours. It's again, we're early morning airport, and we also have some flights that go late at night, and we need to make sure that we're providing that level of service. And so that is one of the requirements, and sometimes it can be a challenge too for businesses that maybe have an inline store in the city and they don't open until 11 a.m. and they close at 7 or 8. This is different, right? And that is because the flow of people who come through at all hours, and you're going to want to be open because that's when your customers are coming through. Now, through the contract negotiations, depending on the nature, like if it's a small gift shop or something like that, there might be room to kind of negotiate certain hours of closure at very low volume travel periods. But generally speaking, we like to shy away from that because we don't like to see closed storefronts when we have passengers in the airport. I think many of you have been in airports where you're making a connecting flight and you're sitting there waiting for your connecting flight and you want to go grab something to eat or you want to go buy something and it's closed. The shutters are down. That's not good for the passenger. And so we really do like to maintain the hours. And we do operate on Sundays as well. So that's full operations 7 days a week. Okay, Paige has asked, if smaller brands are not interested in a kiosk but would like to have their products available in larger retail shops, how do they go about applying? So again, that's not something that you would arrange with the Sunport. We're always happy with an existing concessionaire to make a connection. Okay, so if there's an existing concessionaire in the current program or in the future program, there's a concessionaire that you think you would be interested in marketing your product, you think it's a good fit, you can always reach out to me. You can reach out to my staff here at the Sunport, my colleagues, and we'll point you in the right direction. But it's really up to you and the concessionaire about whether or not your product is carried in that shop. That said, we do like to champion local businesses and local products, and we think it's a good fit. We'll be very encouraging. And then, is there a link to the food and beverage RFP? So Janice, there is, as I mentioned, a mini RFP out right now for 4 units. You can go to Bonfire right now. You can register and you can access that RFP. Now that RFP you can certainly study it as an example, and some of the elements in that RFP are very similar to the retail RFP. But obviously, because it's a different kind of operation, there are a lot of differences. And so I think it's perfectly fair and can be helpful to study the RFP that's open currently. But just remember that the standard and what you will need to respond to in terms of your proposal is going to be articulated in the retail RFP that's yet to come. And then, is there a deadline to apply with the RFP and Ascend ABQ program? That's Dylan's question. Yes, there is a deadline for your proposal. So in the retail RFP that's coming out very soon, it's going to be out on the street for about 90 days. Tyler, Angeline, you might actually have a better sense of exactly how many weeks it'll be open. And if so, please do chime in here. But typically it's about 90 days. Now, the mini RFP that's out now, because it's a reissue of just 4 units, it's a shorter time frame. So we did put it out less than the 90 days. But the retail RFP will be about that amount in full.
Yeah, you got that right, Manny. So, 90 days. So if it gets dropped, in December, it would be due 90 days later in like sometime in February.
Yes. Thank you, Tyler. And definitely, it's the case that there will be what's called a pre-proposal conference that is very similar to this, like a webinar. We did one earlier this week for the mini RFP for the food and beverage. if you register through Bonfire for information on the retail RFP, you will get notification about the pre-proposal conference that will happen for the retail RFP. That's typically scheduled about a month after the RFP is opened. And that's an opportunity to sign on and ask direct questions from the procurement team, from myself. We'll be there to answer questions and to present about, the RFP itself. And really, it's pretty detailed, deep dive that procurement will do into the RFP, and there'll also be assistance around getting into Bonfire, registering, how to use Bonfire, what are the different documents that need to be submitted. So it's pretty detailed. Unlike this webinar, it's not webcast. It is not. I'm sorry. It's not recorded. It is webcast like this one is, but it's not recorded, and it is not posted to our website. It's also non-mandatory. So if you miss the pre-proposal conference, that does not restrict you from proposing for the RFP. And we did that very deliberately because we didn't want, just if you miss, you're not able to join a 1 hour, hour and a half online pre-proposal conference, that doesn't rule you out. We didn't want to do that. But that is another method by which you can get information once the RFP is out. And then just to really be clear about the nature of that, it is informational, but if you have questions, and people do have questions in these things, and they ask and we answer, but the official answers have to come through Bonfire. So to really make sure you get your official answer to a question, you submit it through Bonfire, and procurement answers it and posts it as an addendum, so that any question that anyone asks through Bonfire, everyone who's registered gets the answer. And then the Ascend ABQ program, we don't yet have an announcement date yet in the hopper. So it will be early in 2024. But for vendors who want to participate in the program, just stay tuned. And definitely try to attend the in-person event. We'll post information about that to our website. You can go to our MailChimp link on the terminal renovation landing page. If you scroll down at the bottom, the MailChimp link is there. That's a good way to make sure that you're getting information that's aside from what's announced through Bonfire. And so that you get direct communications from the Sunport when we have something scheduled like that, like an information session about Ascend ABQ, which, as I mentioned, will be in person. And Mayor really loves, this concept, and it really did begin with him. This was his idea that he talked about with us early on, and we all embraced it. And so he's probably going to be making some remarks at the Ascend ABQ launch event. And then we have a question from Rose. What is the length of time provided for completion of the, I guess it's the Ascend, when it becomes available, or will this be a separate application process? So it's not necessarily going to be an RFP. It might be something like an RFI, a request for interest. But I just want to caution everybody, the exact method by which we recruit local businesses has not been finalized yet. The bar will be lower than the RFPs that we're rolling out now. So to apply for the program is not going to be as complicated as it is to propose for the core program. Okay, it's going to be a lot easier, and the reason is very clear. We want to make sure that we're giving a helping hand and not making it too difficult for those businesses that don't have the resources for the investment, don't have the resources to hire a consultant, and are not quite ready to partner with a prime operator. And so stay tuned. There will not be a hard deadline for businesses, though. I can tell you this: there will not be a hard deadline for businesses to get into the program. But the first tranche, you will want to be early if you want to be considered for the first tranche of businesses that come into the program. That said, it's always going to be open for businesses, 1, 2, 3, 20 years down the line, as long as the program exists, to express their interest and to go through the process to be considered for the Ascend program. And we've got to do it that way because these are short runs, 6 months to a year. And so we will continue to always assess and evaluate businesses that are interested in participating. And we have a question from the built environment. How many retail concessionaires currently solidified as tenants before and after renovations? So the answer to after renovations, 0. There are no selections made yet. That's what this RFP coming out next week is all about. It's about selecting those new vendors. And there's opportunities for several to participate in the program. That said, currently we have 3 operators in the retail program. And then Zachary, if you were to be a retail vendor, how long will renovation take place? Was that not till 2025, like I said earlier? So it does depend on the unit. I think there's a couple of different dates by which the units will be handed over. While I'm talking, Tyler and Angeline, if you can look at those dates, that'd be helpful to just express what the timeline is. But all of the warm shell spaces will be handed over by the end of 2024, beginning of 2025 at the latest. Yeah, it depends on I think by how long will the renovation take place? There's kind of 2 aspects here. One is the large renovation, right? The whole project, which I mentioned, ends at the end of 2024. But there's also the tenant improvements. So that's actually building out the spaces themselves. And that depends on the unit. Could be a 3-month timeline, 2, 3, as long, I think, as 5. That would be on the very far end. Tyler, Angeline, do you have any color on that?
Yeah, so I was just looking up the date timelines right now, and I think like you said, Manny, the timeline for the release of the retail units is in conjunction with the overall construction, and the earliest that tenants would be expected to construct retail units would be November of this year, and then the construction in varying stages would continue through May of 2025. Sorry, November of 2024 through May of 2025 is the window of construction.
May of 2025. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Is there availability for another coffee shop? Janice is asking. Currently, we have 3 coffee shop cafes that have already been bid and are already in the program. And that's the core program. So there's not in that program. That said, in the Ascend ABQ program, there could be. We're actually looking at providing water and plumbing as well as refrigeration to some of those units. It won't be for all of the units, but it'll be for some of the units in the Ascend ABQ program. And that's certainly a possibility. As I said, it's very much still taking shape, and we're still looking at whether we can definitely provide that water and plumbing, refrigeration, etc. But that could be an opportunity. And then Zachary asked if there could get a recording of this to review. So yes, I'll ask the team, when do you think posting of this webinar will be on our website?
We'll try and have it up within 24 hours.
Great. So there you go. By the end of the day, or maybe probably tomorrow, the webinar will be available in its entirety, except for that long pause I took maybe to try to get my computer working. But it'll be available in its entirety on my website. And then the note here where Leanna Fresquez from Fresquez Concessions put her email address in the chat for those who are interested in exploring any kind of partnership business arrangement with Fresquez Concessions, which, as I mentioned earlier, was awarded 12 of the 16 units. I just want to say, what Fresquez Concessions is a great example to look at, because they followed the RFP to the letter. They saw exactly what we were calling for in terms of the unit descriptions, and they saw what we were calling for in terms of the capital investment, and they met us where we stood. And they did a wonderful job of bringing new concepts to the table. And so that's a really good example to look at as to how to really kind of nail this process. Of course, you can't see their proposal, but you can see in some of the news coverage that's been done, just the nature of the program that they're rolling out. The businesses, I mentioned some of them earlier, so it'll be on the webinar, that will be coming through the program through different partnership arrangements. So we're very excited about that, and that's a good kind of example to follow when you're looking at this opportunity. Okay, working downward. There's another question from Dean. Will your retail inventory be secured, or do you move it somewhere every night? So yeah, the retail inventory is secured. It doesn't need to be cleared out of the space every night. One of the beautiful things about operating a business in the Sunport is, you're already in a secured facility. So it's pretty easy to protect your merchandise, especially post security, past TSA, because not anybody can just waltz through, right? But there are roll down gates that'll be required, or other kinds of ways to secure, like if you have one of the kiosks or something like that, there'll be ways to secure the units so that when it's closed, people cannot access the space or the merchandise. Okay. And Leah Black, she's our marketing and outreach coordinator, manager. She dropped the bonfire information into the chat. Thank you for doing that, Leah. And by the way, if you haven't already heard, Leah Black, who's on my team and wonderful colleague to work with, has been talking about Dream of Flight, the Sunport Reimagined, on the news. We've done radio together. You can see her. She's done a lot of news coverage. She actually did kind of a deep dive story with KRQE on the refurbishment of our heritage furniture. And there's a new podcast that she does with Mayor Keller that just dropped yesterday, I believe, called One ABQ and You, and that's available on our podcast platform. So Leah's probably blushing right now, but I did want to plug that because I think it's a really fantastic effort to communicate more about what's going on in our city to the public. Dylan, is there an advantage to applying sooner than later? No, there's not. So just make sure that you look at the checklist, because there will be a checklist at the beginning of, at the front end of the RFP document. And that tells you all the documentation that you need to submit and how it needs to be submitted. Just make sure you follow that to the letter and you're very careful about it, because if you make a mistake, depending on the nature of the mistake, it could rule you non-responsive and we won't even get to see your proposal. We don't want that to happen. And it could happen. It happens all the time with RFPs. So be meticulous, use that checklist, and just make sure that you give yourself ample time to upload everything before the RFP closes, because once the RFP closes, there's no way for late submittals of any documents, whether it's the core documents, supporting documents. Procurement cannot accept any late submittals. So make sure you get all your stuff in. Will we be showing the packages and locations at this meeting? No, we won't. One of the reasons why we're not showing more in this meeting is because some of the final elements of the RFP are still getting dialed in as we speak, still working with the team to get these things done. And so we didn't want to showcase the packaging of the RFPs at this stage before it actually comes out. But what will be in the RFP are several reference items. You can see a terminal map. You can see exactly where the locations are. You can see a breakdown of all the units in the RFP. It will show you how much square footage there is in each unit. It will show you per unit what we're looking for, essentially, a description of what we are seeking for all those units. So all that information will be available quite soon. And how would I look into the kiosk program? That was a question from Zachary. So again, go to the website, keep your eyes on our press releases, on our communications about the Ascend ABQ event, and make sure that you register through our MailChimp. That's a really good way to make sure you get all of our communications. All right, to be correct, this is from Zachary also, I would find all of this info, Sunport website, such as RFP, Ascend, Bonfire. Yeah, again, a link to Bonfire is going to be on our ABQ Sunport biz.com terminal renovation landing page. It's already there. So, the Bonfire link, you can go there today, you can register. And I encourage you to register, even though the retail RFP is not out yet. Go ahead and get that done. You really want to be able to jump on that RFP the day it drops. And if you register before it is released, then you'll be sure to have access to the RFP the day it comes out. Okay, another question just came in. Ascend is a series of kiosks with different items from various vendors, correct? Yes, correct. It is. Again, 6 months to a year is the turn on Ascend ABQ kiosks. And it will be different items from different vendors. And there's not going to be a prime vendor that chooses. The program manager for Ascend ABQ will select, and we'll work with them to select local businesses. And we're already working with members of our business community. That's not the small businesses, it's the people with connections to small businesses. We're working with the business community to make sure that we're shaping this program in a way that is going to be really helpful to local businesses and that will be effective. So that's an ongoing effort. We're really excited about launching it. And food items will be okay in the Ascend kiosk program. Yes. So especially prepackaged items, perfect for the Ascend ABQ program. That said, as I mentioned, we're still exploring the provision of water and plumbing and things like that. So we might be able to offer for folks to prepare on site, but I would say that's quite limited in that regard. Another question from the built environment. RFP for these retail concessionaires can be expected on what date? So as I mentioned at the beginning, December 5th is our soft target. I think it'll probably be a little bit later than that, just as we kind of button up all the details. The key is we got to get this RFP right. So we're not going to rush it. If it's a few days after December 5th or early the following week, so be it. But we want to make sure everything is all right before it is all loaded up and released. Looks like the last question. That was the last question. So I'll give, I know we allowed for a little bit more time in this this session. I'm happy to stay on for another 5 to 10 minutes max, but then I do have to jump. So if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat now, and I'll give just a minute or so for folks to do that. Suzanne asked, do we have contact for Fresquez? Yeah, it's in the chat. If you scroll up on the chat, Leanna Fresquez put her information there in the chat. So you can find her email address if you just scroll up in the chat. Okay. Got one more in here. Okay. Robert asked, would something like a popcorn warmer merchandiser work in the kiosk to serve fresh to passengers? Robert, it depends on the size of whatever equipment. I mean, certainly there'll be the provision of power, and some equipment will be appropriate for the space. But remember that these small kiosks in the Ascend ABQ program will be in high traffic areas in either concourse. as well as a couple in the Great Hall. And so a very large piece of equipment would be difficult to fit and accommodate. If it's a smaller piece of equipment that doesn't create an obstruction for passenger flow, it will probably be okay. But that's something that we can really drill down on early next year when we get to that process of engaging all the small businesses directly. And we'll make sure that there's ample time and ample opportunity early next year when we officially launch the program to talk to you about that. And it can be an iterative process. We'll work with you to try to make sure that you have the clearest understanding possible and that we're accommodating you as best we can. And then Dean asked, bathroom breaks, lunch, dinner for retail, everything would have to be covered up. So I'm not sure if you're asking about the core, you say retail. So a retail unit in the core program has to be staffed at all times. So that's something you want to make sure you plan for. Now, if you have an Ascend ABQ unit, and a unit in the small kiosk program, you only have one staff, that's something that we'll just have to talk through. Okay, it's a totally new program, a totally new effort. We understand that somebody can't just stand there for, all day long without a break. So we'll make sure that we work with you on addressing those kinds of issues. It's really important that we're taking good care of our personnel who are here. So do not worry, we'll definitely address that issue. But as far as the core retail program, those have to be staffed at all times during opening hours. And that's why you will have multiple staff in any one location at any given time. So there's one more question, follow-up. We won't have additional kiosks. For example, one kiosk with items from various businesses. So that's still taking shape as well, but we are looking in Ascend ABQ, we are looking at the possibility of having a co-op unit where it will be shared staffing. But there will be several different shelves within that kiosk display area that could have, I think, up to 4 merchandisers. So that's one option that we're looking at, so that there's a co-op unit type offering. That's definitely a possibility, especially if you have a very limited product line and there's not that much to merchandise, but you still want to participate. We're looking at providing that. Okay, and then our colleagues at Hudson, who, as I mentioned, are current operators and are also, of course, going to be proposing for the new RFP. They've also dropped their information in the chat. You're welcome to utilize that information to contact them. I would highly encourage any other primes that might be on the call to put your contact information in the chat now. And so we'll leave this active for a few more minutes to make sure if any other operators would like to drop their contact information in the chat, that you do so. Tyler, Angeline, anything else in the interim that you would like to add, clarify? Did I just absolutely nail everything and get it all right?
Manny, you absolutely nailed everything and you got it all right. Yeah, I think pretty much covered everything here today.
Excellent. Thanks, Tyler.